Well, Russ, just going to go through a little injury update with the side of the upcoming games. What can you tell us?
Well, obviously everyone knows we've had quite a lot of injuries this season, and it has been difficult at times. But specifically, if I talk about each individual player, and then I can give you some reasons why we've had injuries at certain times and stuff. So a lot of people have been asking about James Rowe, you know, what happened there, and you know, how's he doing, and because no one's really seen him sort of since September, but he stood on some glass in September time and unfortunately severed some tendons and some nerves in the bottom of his foot, so he had to have surgery, which was quite a complex operation, and then has been under the guise of the sort of NHS, so he's had to go back for numerous follow-up appointments, to the point where, you know, he's walking around, he's doing lots of strengthening work, he's getting the feelings back into the bottom of his foot, but as a footballer we've got to get him to run first, and that's the point we're still working towards. So, you know, we're coming up to February now. I'd imagine that it's going to be quite tight for him to get back playing this season, but there's every possibility that he could be training again before April time, but it's literally week to week kind of assessment with him. So that's him. George Fowler injured himself in training in November actually, and unfortunately the injection that he had about a week later hasn't really worked. We have to give it sort of 3 or 4 weeks to know whether it's worked. So he's got a meniscus tear, which he's going in to have surgery on Thursday. Without going into too much detail, depending on how that surgery goes, will depend on whether George is back this season or whether it's the end of his season. We won't really know that until the surgeon goes in on Thursday, so I'll know by Friday really. Shamir Fenelon, obviously he's had a number of injuries, muscle-related injuries this season, and it's been a bit stop-start for him. He's going to be going back into training hopefully in the next 10 days. So after this weekend, he is one of probably 3 players that should be in and around it come the time we play Eastleigh. So his was a quad strain, which obviously happened, I think, against Bedford, so he came off. Jake Cole injured himself in training. He injured his shoulder, his AC joint, which is just up here, slightly displaced it during a dive in training on New Year's Eve. So we've had to, with the goalkeeper, manage him slightly different. It's a similar injury to what Matt McClure had, but as an outfield player you can get away with it a little bit. With Jake we haven't been able to, because he's got a dive on that same shoulder, so we're hoping to get an injection for him, possibly this week. We have to give it a period of time where we rehabilitate before we go in and, you know, do those sort of things. So if he does get the injection, then he should be back for Eastleigh in and around it at that time. If he doesn't, then it might be the week after, if not a little bit further. Jacob's same sort of scenario as Shamir. He's had a couple of injuries sort of concurrently. His latest one is an adductor strain, which has been a bit worse than we first hoped. He actually injured it in training as he was coming back from his previous injury. Yeah, so he's kind of a couple of weeks, but he was running today. Kins obviously fractured his cheekbone in a couple of places on New Year's Day against Maidenhead. We've had to wait a little bit of time for the swelling and bruising to go down so that then he can have a mask fitted. That mask is actually now ready to be collected, which he gets today. So he'll train for the rest of this week and will be available for selection on Saturday. Carly Osborne, we've had a long battle with him on a high grade quad strain, which was actually back in September, after he'd already had 2 injuries prior to that. We did get him back to the point where we brought him back in, and he played sort of 70 minutes against Wrexham, but then unfortunately overdid it a little bit himself on Christmas Day out running, and he then sort of tweaked reoccurrence, same injury but a smaller area on Boxing Day at Maidenhead, which is why we pulled him out as soon as he sort of mentioned that he felt something. So we scanned it, and there was a small grade 1 strain there in his quad. Basically, he's going to be going back into training probably next week. So again, he's another one that hopefully come Eastleigh he would have had a period of time back in training, and he'll then be available for selection. So that's them. Obviously Marvin had a slight strain of a hamstring on New Year's Day but played Saturday, but we're managing him. And there's a couple of other players that we are managing. On a positive, Scott Rendell should be back in training next week. He's quite close now. And again, not having the Solihull game will allow him to consistently train up to the Eastleigh game. So again, hopefully, all being well, if he continues to make the same progress, then he'll be going back into the squad for the Eastleigh game. Nick Arnold was doing great. He had 5 weeks where he was back in training, trained every day consistently. We had a couple of friendly games that would have been really helpful for him, but unfortunately he just got a little bit of swelling around the knee prior to those games. Although he did take part, he did have half an hour in one of the games, but we just had to sort of pull him right back, and we're reassessing that situation at the moment, just going forward. So I think that's it at the moment.
Okay, thanks for all that information, Russell. How's the season been for you then? It's probably been one of the busiest ever.
Yeah, it's felt like it's been a very long season. We've got a lot of injured players at one time, but then we've got games as well. So in every game you're going to get a couple of players who pick up small injuries. And we've had to really prioritise how we manage the group in terms of making sure that players are going back into training at the right time, rather than trying to push them back in too soon and then they're coming back out again. But we've been literally down to the bare bones over the Christmas period. When you get an injury such as James Rowe, who potentially is out for the season early on in the season, plus we already had Nick, who we were sort of managing. When you've got a small squad, which we did have, early part of the season, 18 to 20 players, that has a massive impact on the rest of the squad. And those first few months of the season up to October, I think you play sort of 16 games by the first weekend in October. Puts a massive strain on everyone else, so that then other players who might have minor injuries are then playing through it, training through it, so that we can field the best team. So I think that kind of has a snowball effect going forward. So we've been a bit unfortunate with a couple of injuries early on, and then you can guarantee you're going to pick a couple of injuries up in any game. Whether it's someone getting a dead leg or someone like Kings obviously the other day, but that's the nature of the beast, so just have to get on with it.
And some fans have said they've been critical where we've had so many injuries. Considering last season as well, we had a little mini spell, didn't we? Where we had a few injuries. Very few of these have actually been in training, haven't they?
Of the current injuries, yeah, I mean, I would say on average, sort of 90% of your injuries are going to be in games, just because of the impact and the intensity of the game, and the fact that what's at stake. Players are going to go into challenges a lot harder. We have had a couple of training injuries which have been unfortunate. George was one, and potentially we may lose him for the season. Coley was another one, and they were both around about the same time. So, it has been difficult going. At any time it's been difficult. Probably since beginning of October, it has been really difficult. But we just, we've kept going, keep working to get players back. And from what I've just said there, that update I've just given you, I'm hopeful that we're turning the corner now. If we manage to get through Saturday with very little injuries, or any sort of significant knocks. Adam had to come off, but hopefully he'll be fine in probably a couple of days. If we can get through Saturday with that same kind of injury-free scenario, then I think we'll be okay, and we'll probably see more players filling the bench and probably a few in the stand that can't get in the squad that are fit. So going forward, hopefully that'll happen.
Okay, well, thank you for your time today, Ross.
No
Cheers.
problems.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chris. Cheers. Thank you.